I've reread chapter 34 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex several times already, and with every reread, I kept realizing that most of the fandom probably won't pay attention to some of the really important details in this chapter. Because there's a lot of fan service on the surface, from the mention of Itachi all the way to Boruto's confrontation with Code, which barely even started. But underneath that surface layer, there's so much hidden material that it honestly makes me want to break the story down scene by scene. What we're looking at here feels like the foundation for the next massive turning point of the entire story. So definitely subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be analyzing this chapter in extreme detail. I'm also really close to hitting my goal of 500 subscribers, and I'm hoping you guys can help me get there. Thanks so much for subscribing, and now let's get into it. And the most interesting thing is that a lot of the details in this chapter feel way too calm, considering how devastating they could become later on in future chapters. In my opinion, the single most underrated part of the chapter is the explanation of the Thorn Soul Bulb. If you don't really dig into it, it almost sounds like a normal piece of world building. If the Thorn Soul is destroyed, then the shinobi who became the foundation for a Shinju simply remains trapped inside the tree until their chakra eventually runs out. At first glance, it seems straightforward, but the problem is that this completely changes our understanding of the Shinju. Up until now, part of the fandom viewed them as separate entities, like monsters created from shinobi. But for the first time, this chapter shows that the connection between the original person and the Shinju isn't severed even after the transformation, and this is where I suddenly had a thought that genuinely made me uncomfortable. If the connection remains intact, then theoretically the reverse process should also be possible. Not destroying the Shinju along with the person inside, but separating the human from it. And honestly, I think Ikemoto is intentionally steering the story toward that exact idea. Otherwise, there would have been no reason to explain the mechanics of the Thorn Soul in so much detail when we'd already heard about it before. And it also raises what might become the biggest question moving forward. Where is the original person that Jura copied from? I think that's going to become one of the biggest mysteries in future chapters. Now let's move on to the Shinju ally known as Code. Because for the first time in a long while, he doesn't feel like a deranged fanatic anymore. He feels like a shinobi who's on the edge of completely falling apart internally, and that's a huge difference. Before this, Code always kept moving forward almost mechanically. He was driven by Ishiki's legacy and by hatred. He truly believed he stood on the side of some higher power. But in chapter 34, that certainty finally starts cracking. He listens from the shadows. He waits. He avoids direct confrontation. And after Boruto starts pressuring him, he actually retreats. And to me, this is one of the most important narrative signals in the entire chapter. Because fear changes characters far more deeply than hatred ever can. That's why Koji's words about the third branch of the future sound so unsettling. Because almost impossible does not mean impossible. I think a lot of people overlooked this detail because Koji immediately said that the probability of that future was close to zero. But the problem is that Ikemoto never introduces details like that for no reason, especially through a character who can literally see possible futures. Koji never said Code would never join Boruto's side. He said the odds were almost zero, which means that timeline still exists. And honestly, it fits Code's current state perfectly. Ishiki is gone. Aida rejected him. Kawaki hates him. The Shinju are using him like a tool, and his own plan is collapsing right in front of him. For the first time in his life, Code no longer has a god to worship, and Kishimoto loves changing fanatics precisely at moments like this. What makes things even more interesting is Boruto's behavior itself, because he never tried to instantly destroy Code. Instead, he methodically pressured him, and he did it with such cold precision that in some moments, Boruto genuinely starts resembling Momoshiki Otsutsuki. It almost feels like Ikemoto is intentionally showing Boruto slipping further and further into a colder state of mind. And for now, it looks effective. But the real question is, where is the line where he starts losing himself? Especially when you consider the central theme of the entire chapter adapting to inevitability. The chapter title, I'm Already Used to It, sounds incredibly simple until you start looking closely at the characters. Because literally every single person in this chapter is living in a state of emotional exhaustion. Sarada has gotten used to being accused. Sakura has gotten used to living between her family and the system. Boruto has gotten used to being the enemy of his own world. Code has gotten used to pressure and isolation. Even Koji is starting to look like someone exhausted from endlessly trying to control the future. And this is exactly where Boruto finally stops feeling like part of Naruto's legacy. Because the old world of Naruto was always built on the hope of restoring what was lost and saving your friend. But this new era almost feels like it accepts a completely different idea. The world is already broken, and the characters are simply learning how to survive inside that broken state. And you can really feel that in Sakura's scene. I honestly think the fandom interpreted her return way too superficially. A lot of people just saw it as a nice nostalgic moment with the older generation. But if you look closer, the scene is much deeper than that, because Sakura is essentially taking Sarada's side against the system. But the most interesting thing is the parallel Sakura herself brings up Itachi, and that is an incredibly strange comparison. Because in Naruto, Itachi represented a person whom the world turned into a monster in order to preserve order, and Boruto is now standing in an almost identical position. And I really think Kishimoto is drawing that parallel intentionally. Even Koji in this chapter starts feeling less confident about the future. Before, he talked about timelines almost coldly, but now he increasingly emphasizes how unstable events are becoming, and he's beginning to acknowledge new possibilities. And I think the reason for that is Boruto himself and his unpredictable decisions that could lead to the third outcome involving the destruction of the future itself, just like Boruto pointed out. We still haven't been told what that third possibility actually is, and I think that's extremely important. Personally, I think the story is absolutely heading toward that third outcome, and I'm actually planning to make a separate video entirely about that third path soon, so subscribe to the channel because that discussion is going to be really interesting. This all feels very similar to the classic idea of a person who has stepped beyond fate itself, and maybe that's exactly what will become the ultimate conflict of the entire story later on. And here's the thing that scares me the most. It feels like the characters themselves are slowly starting to stop believing that the old world can even be restored anymore. Maybe that's the true point of no return for the entire story. But what do you guys think? Do you believe Code could actually switch sides and eventually stand with Boruto? And is Boruto himself slowly becoming closer to the very thing Naruto feared the most? I'd genuinely love to read your theories, because after this chapter, that feeling of an approaching point of no return became almost physically tangible for me personally as a reader.